think we're ready. Just waiting for the second hand to get up to 12 there, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to September planning meeting. It is moved by Councillor Karen, second by Councillor Hunter. Be it resolved that the council agenda as presented on September 24th, 2024 be approved as circulated. And vote on that, please. That carries, thank you. We have, I guess, a third of our members aren't able to join us today. We've got Councillor Jorgensen, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Morphy will not be joining us today. And are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest, Council? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Strength, I'll go to you to read the land acknowledgement statement, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the First Peoples who, for thousands of years before us, were and are still the keepers and caretakers of this land where we now live and work, and in particular, the Chippewas of Rama, Wata Mohawk First Nations, and the Moon River Métis. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. We recognize all the generations of Indigenous people and their historic connection to this place, and we are grateful for the opportunity to gather here at this time.
Okay, thank you. Before I get started, I will note that we do have electronic participation for Planning Council today, which I think is a first, Madam Clerk? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, I'm just giving the fair warning that sometimes, you know, it's going to be perfect. However, there could be technical difficulties, so bear with us. Okay, so with that, there are 4 public meetings scheduled for this afternoon for zoning bylaw amendments. Application number ZA 2022-24, 2836924, Ontario Inc. Application number ZA 23-2024, Sigline and Rowan. Application number ZA 25-2024, 2836924, Ontario Inc. Application number ZA 26-2024 for Poulter. The Planning Act requires that a public meeting be held before council decides to pass a zoning bylaw amendment. The public meeting serves 2 purposes. First, to present to council and the public the details and background to the proposal, and second, to receive comments from the public and agencies before a council decision is made. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the public meeting. The Manager of Planning Services, Adam Egger, will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of public meeting was circulated. Staff will then advise of the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning amendment and provide any additional information that is relevant to the application. Staff will further summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the applicant will be requested to make a presentation, followed by questions or presentations from the public, either in favor or against the proposal. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, staff, or anyone giving presentations. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will then be considered by council later this afternoon. If anyone from the public in the council chambers would like to request notification of the decision of any application, please complete the form provided on the table at the back of the room and return the form to the same location. Always makes me laugh. I guess it goes missing sometimes. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to advise how, when, and to whom notice of the public meeting were circulated. Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of the public meetings concerning the proposed zoning bylaw amendments were sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters of the property subject to the proposed bylaw amendment and emailed to applicable agencies. Included within the notices was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal, a site plan, and a key map showing the location of the property in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P13.
It is important to note that should council pass any bylaws this afternoon, there is a 20-day appeal period during which time the applicant, the municipality, and certain public bodies as defined by the Planning Act may appeal the decision of council. During this appeal period, no building permit may be issued or other work commenced. Also, in the event there is an appeal and in order to be kept advised of a possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, members of the public must request and be sent a copy of council's decision on the application. Public meeting number 1. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA 2022-2024 6924 Ontario Inc. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located on Bryden's Bay Road. The property is currently zoned residential backlot RB7 and is designated waterfront area in the official plan. The subject property is currently vacant and densely vegetated with mature trees. The topography of the property varies, with areas that generally slope upwards from the road along the west and downwards along the east, lower lying area to the south, and downwards. The property is defined by a narrow portion of land to the north, which results from Bryden's Bay Road wrapping around it more sharply. You can just see there at the top of the screen, and will really be the crucial point to the application that's before council today. So a zoning bylaw amendment application has been submitted in order to permit the creation of a waterfront backlot with a minimum frontage of 92 meters where 150 meters is required. The application was submitted concurrently with consent applications B09 and B10 2024 in order to create 2 new lots and retain 1 lot. The retained lot is in green on screen. The consent applications were conditionally approved at the Town's Committee of Adjustment meeting at the September 20th meeting. And one of the conditions was that the retained lot be appropriately zoned. And as we heard here, it's for the resulting frontage. So frontage is measured as a straight line chord distance of the property. So you can see there, it's hard to see on screen, but that's where the 92 meters is measured from. However, the actual frontage of the property as detailed in the staff report running along Bryden's Bay Road is 178 meters. So it does exceed 150 meters, which is prescribed in the official plan. However, we look to the zoning bylaw for the definition of how to measure that frontage. So in this regard, staff are satisfied that the lot does meet the appropriate frontage. Other considerations as discussed in the staff report are for safe and appropriate access. The infrastructure department has weighed in and placed comments and had no concern that entrances can be appropriately sited on the retained lands and had no concerns with the 92 meters of frontage, as it's more so a technicality and that the property actually possesses the 178 meters of running frontage along the road. Oh, sorry. At the time of writing this report, the Deputy Chief Building Official and Deputy Treasurer had no objections. The infrastructure technologist had no objection, however requested for lot grading plans to be submitted for review and approval by the town prior to the development occurring, and that any lighting is dark sky compliant, and that the locations be marked for entrances for future consideration, and indicated that an entrance permit would be required to be approved prior to constructing the physical entrance. And in saying that, staff included the appropriate conditions through the consent application to require a consent agreement to ensure that staff were going to get those grading plans. So that's how those comments will be addressed. As council's aware, we do have a dark sky lighting bylaw, so all development will have to be in accordance with that. The District of Muskoka had no objections to the application, and the Deputy Fire Chief, no objections subject to Ontario Fire Code and Ontario Building Code requirements. Further, public comments have been received, and all of those comments have been forwarded to council for their consideration and review. One comment was requesting clarification about development rights associated with the proposed retained lot and about receiving an entrance off an existing road allowance to the west. A letter of objection with concerns expressed about the circulation distance of the application and the development impacts of the character of the neighborhood, environmental features, and drainage to neighboring properties. Another letter of concern was received with respect about the properties being used for rental purposes and about environmental impacts with the associated servicing and developing of the lands. And another letter of concern was received with reference representing 60 cottage owners in the area, concerns expressed about environmental impacts from development, drainage impacts to abutting properties, impacts to the Bryden's Bay Trail, which was previously located on the property. The letter then further went on to request of the town to reinstate it in the former area on the private lands as a condition. And with respect to these comments, staff would offer the following. The retained lot would be developable as of right now without the application before you if it remained as one piece of property. It does front on a year-round municipally maintained road. It does meet the frontage requirements and the area requirements. So if this application was not before you, a dwelling could be built on this property right now as of right with no applications and no further development controls. And that was something that was talked about specifically at the Committee of Adjustment. So now through the consent agreement that's been required, we're able to obtain things like grading plans to address the drainage concerns, which if this application wasn't before the Committee of Adjustment and we weren't able to enter into that consent agreement, we wouldn't have the controls to even look at obtaining a grading plan prior to development. So from that perspective, staff are satisfied that has been adequately addressed and will be addressed to the satisfaction of our infrastructure department, who is the technical expert when it comes to on-site drainage. In addition to that, with respect to environmental impacts, it's worth mentioning, again, we're only looking at the green lot here, and it meets the lot area requirements. It actually doubles the minimum lot area requirements, and it really what's before you is just the technicality of the road frontage. With respect to the trail, as council may be aware, in the end of last year, the trail was removed from the private lands at the request of the previous owner. It has now been sited on town-owned property, so the trail exists, it's just in a different location. And lastly, with respect to the comments as it relates to short-term rentals, as council is aware, we do have a short-term rental licensing bylaw. Any residential property could obtain a short-term rental license should they go through the appropriate channels. That's not something that this application is contemplating. Again, what we're focusing on here is for the 92 meters of frontage. I'll take you through some site photos briefly. Again, it is a densely vegetated property, so this is from the approximate location into the retained lands taken from Bryden's Bay Trail. This is then moving into the site, and it appeared that there was a relatively flat area cleared that could be suitable for development. And then this is just looking south. There are the topographical constraints that staff noted in the report. It's also worth mentioning that as part of the consent agreement too, there was a condition or stipulation that development only occurred in approved areas where the building permits, if the application is approved, would be issued for. So any other site grading or alteration outside of those areas where the building permits are issued wouldn't be permitted, and then that would be consistent in ensuring that development's kept away from those steep slopes. This is then looking along the sight lines of Bryden's Bay Road, and then turning at the top of the screen there is where that sharp turn or pinch point is, just to orient you. And then this is standing at that corner, and then working our way down from there. So as detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement. It conforms to the official plan, it's appropriate and represents good planning, and as a result, staff are recommending that the application be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Egger. At this time, I will ask for comments from Agent Savas Verdes, who has been pre-registered to participate electronically. Savas, please ensure your camera and microphone are turned on. Press the speak icon and follow with your comments, please.
Good afternoon, everybody in council. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Is everybody able? Yep, perfect. Great. I'm here my name is Savas Verdes from Plan-Muskoka. I'm here this afternoon representing the applicants as their agent, and I'm a registered professional planner. I don't really have a lot to add. Adam covered off everything very comprehensively. I think he's described the application accurately. And I agree with staff's recommendations and outlook on the comments received from the public. I just want to reiterate, this is an application just for a frontage deficiency for the center lot of the 3 that are being created. It's just a matter of when you bend a line, the 2 ends come closer to each other, and that's pretty much why we have this application in front of council here today. Otherwise, the lots all meet the minimum frontage and area requirements. And as Adam had mentioned, the center lot itself is more than double the lot area minimum that's required by the official plan and the zoning bylaw. A lot of the comments received, I feel, are slightly irrelevant to the actual frontage deficiency for that lot. I do sympathize with the public and their strong passion for the area, but I don't feel that this application will have as negative of an impact as they sort of speculate it will. As Adam has mentioned, the consent agreement condition that is being added on to the consent approval for the middle lot and all 3 lots actually will in fact address a lot of the concerns that are being raised by the public. Specifically, it'll make sure that the lot does not get clear cut or any of those sort of assumptions that have been made, and that the lots will remain natural in appearance. So I think those things have been addressed. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will ask for comments from the applicant, Matthew Baldessaro, who has pre-registered to participate electronically. Matthew, please ensure your camera and microphone are turned on. Press the speak icon and follow with your comments, please.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Oh, yes.
Just a quick introduction. My name is Matt. I actually don't have anything additional to add. Savas kind of covered everything as well as Adam. So that's it for me. If there's any questions or concerns, and I could address them as needed, or you can direct them towards Savas and he could speak on our behalf as well. So that's it. That's it from me.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so there may be some questions for you. And at this time, I will ask for comments from applicant Dan. Okay, so who is not here? So we will move on. We're going to do the electronic applicants first. Okay, so at this time, I will ask for comments from Anna Richter, who has pre-registered to participate electronically. Anna, please ensure your camera and microphone are turned on. Press the speak icon, provide your full mailing address, and follow with your comments, please. We can't hear you, so I'm not sure.
Is that what? I'm sorry, we have an issue with sound.
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. As I said, my name is Anna Richter, and my husband Bill Powell and I own the property at 1288 Bridens Bay Road. So good afternoon, Madam Mayor, council members and staff. We have previously addressed the members of the Committee of Adjustment and Planning staff of our concerns, including the fact that the road is a blind curve and there are obstructed sight lines, which is a significant consideration. Our property is just basically opposite that tight curved rocky outcrop, opposite the proposed retained lot with the reduced frontage. Another concern, of course, is drainage at the new entrances and driveways. To prevent further aggravation of existing conditions and additional public works expenditures, we feel it appropriate to limit the number of new entrances. There is a lack of zoning requirement to retain vegetation on steep slopes per the official plan. This is another concern. There is a limited protection of natural features and retaining the vegetation on those steep slopes within the allowable development location that is delineated by the minimum front, side, and rear yard setbacks, that area within what is currently 18 meters along one side, 6 meters on other sides, etc. And that is another concern. Too few details have been provided regarding the proposed development to support the report's assertion that the resulting lots may be appropriately developed and serviced, maintain a natural character, and minimize development impacts to the environment. For example, other municipalities require a minimum of a 2-hectare lot size to support a single dwelling and the appropriate sized septic systems to service them in areas that have much more permeable soils. So we're concerned about how successful these proposed smaller lots on the rock can actually be. Further to those written comments submitted in advance of the Committee of Adjustment hearing for the companion application last week, today I would like to address this council regarding the proposed zoning amendment. In the context of the town's the town's strategic plan, the vision for Gravenhurst is a sustainable and innovative community, welcoming everyone. Its mission is to enhance the quality of life in Gravenhurst through responsible municipal service delivery. Its values include accountability, collaboration, respect, and stewardship. The first goal number 1, is also particularly pertinent here, to promote community safety, health, and well-being for all residents. Goal number 7, to adapt, and mitigate the impacts of climate change is also a consideration. And goal number 12, as stated, to drive two-way communication and engagement with all community members. Community members have shared concerns regarding drainage, loss of ecohabitat, deforestation, use, and tenure. As stated by Committee of Adjustment member Howard Ungerman, who voted in favor of the severance, this is the opportunity to review the proposed development details, at least the very few details that may have been made available. Please respect and address the concerns expressed by the community and council's constituents. While provincial policy statements may offer guidelines regarding maintaining vegetation on steep slopes, please ensure that this is manifest using site-specific zoning bylaw amendments. Specifically, please add other terms to the proposed special provisions 1326, proposed to be a part of Appendix C per subsection 3.5.4 of Bylaw 2010.4. Among existing special provisions already applied to 24 other residential backlot-7 zoned lots, we refer to the terms of the following precedents. Exception Special Provision S510, which reduced maximum coverage to 3% from 5%, which was allowed under the zoning bylaw. Another exception, Special Provision S1295, went so far as to regulate that no structures are permitted, no site alteration is permitted, no tree cutting is permitted, and entrance permits are not available. Specifically for this application today, we request that Council exercise its authority as required so that the vast majority of the vast majority of the property areas remain forested with existing vegetation, and that is about 80% of the lot area to retain their existing forestation and vegetation. B, that the site alteration is limited to 20% maximum of the existing site area, entire site area. C, that the building setbacks be increased to 30 meters minimum for front yard, side yard, and rear yards. And that the septic fields, number D, the septic fields are set back a minimum of 50 meters from the front, side, and rear lot lines. And E, that septic systems require enlarged capacity to account for the intense use periods during all 4 seasons. Perhaps the mechanisms to address these additional terms would require that the application be deferred in order to circulate a revised zoning amendment that would include these terms, or perhaps denied and they would have to reapply. Either way, we are confident that planning and administrative staff will find the means by which these additional items may be added and the objective achieved. We note that planning staff have verbally stated that where Old Portage Road is indicated on the drawing is incorrect. And in fact, there is no municipal road along the southwest boundary of the existing lot, only an allowance. The drawing provided may graphically misrepresent the site. So why allow it as is? This in itself may be the technical cause to immediately defer the application. But more pointedly, there is authority and precedent to require reductions in the general provisions for the RB-7 zone as a zoning amendment with the 5 additional terms I have outlined. And as citizens, we request that this planning committee and council exercise that authority on behalf of its constituents to protect the existing forested environment and habitat for wildlife, to protect the drainage of public roadways for the safety of its vehicular, cycling, and pedestrian traffic, and to protect the existing developed community of smaller waterfront properties which predate the current zoning bylaw from further drainage problems. Thank you for your attention to our concerns and requests. We have requested notification of the decision per our written request last week.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, so I think that does it for our people who are joining us electronically. So that brings us to the public who are here. So if there's members of the public who would like to address council, please come up to the podium and state your name and your mailing address. Okay, are we seeing none, or are we seeing members of the public who'd like to come up and address council, or no? Okay. Seeing none? Okay, council, it's up to you. Are there any questions or comments for our planner or any persons who've made presentations here today? Councillor Strang?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Mrs. Richter mentioned something about Old Portage Road that I hadn't read or seen anything about, and I didn't. She was very swift in her presentation, so I didn't quite understand what she had said. Perhaps Mr. Ager could speak to it.
Mr. Ager?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Strength, and if I may, I might be able to answer a number of other points that were raised too, if that's okay with Council. And if Madam Clerk could potentially put the presentation back up, I can maybe go over a few of those things. So first, so my understanding of the comment, if you see on screen here the sketch and it says Old Portage Road there on the, we'll call it the southwest corner, but then I'll need to get to the back of the air photo. You can see how Old Portage Road actually runs, and down there specifically is where the maintained portion of the road ends, and it is a road allowance where it meets the property. So it's just a discrepancy between the site plan that shows Old Portage Road running that far, but really it's just a road allowance as you saw on screen there, and what the actual situation is where it ends south of the land. So Old Portage Road does not touch this property. It's an unopened portion of municipal road allowance. In addition to that, there were comments made about lot coverages and reducing those. So as council is aware, in the RB7 zone, 5% lot coverage is the lot coverage. The neighboring properties that are on the waterfront, as council knows, have a lot coverage of 13%. So this is already our least amount of lot coverage that would be permitted on these lands. And as I made mention of in the presentation originally, if this application wasn't before council today, this property does have development rights. It's on a year-round municipally maintained road and can develop up to 5% of the entire lot area right now. Moving it into individual pieces at 5% is just 5% of each piece. It's the same amount of lot coverage. So we're not changing or adding any potential lot coverage. There were also comments made about setbacks. The development control that's really being used here, and that's through the benefit of the consent application, was that consent agreement which limits any site alteration or tree clearing only to occur in the areas where the building permits are being issued. So if they're allowed to develop up to 5% of all structures. So that's not 5% for a dwelling only, and then they can have a detached garage and a shed. It's the shed plus the garage plus the dwelling equals 5%. And so that's already looked at through the consent agreement. The last comment made with respect to zoning prohibiting the location of entrances, that instance was actually where we didn't have a consent and it fronted on a district road as well, and the district did not want a new entrance to be put on the district road. It wanted to be, the district likes that the local roads have the entrances located on them where possible. So in this case, we don't have a district road or the necessary control to limit where the entrances are. Our infrastructure department has commented that they're satisfied that entrances can be supported on all 3 lots, and that it won't be conceivably located at the top of the curve. It will be located far enough away because they do have sightline guidelines they have to meet. So there are experts when it comes to the suitable location of entrances and sightlines, and they had no concerns.
Okay, council, are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Ager, are there any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council as a result of these proceedings?
Your worship, as detailed in the staff report, staff are recommending that the application be approved.
The bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. Moving right along to public meeting number 2, I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA 23-2024 for Siglin and Rowan. I will now ask the manager of planning services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located on Loon Lake. The property, oh, my apologies. We're missing a slide there. The property is designated waterfront area in the official plan and is zoned residential waterfront, RW6D, in the town zoning bylaw, and as discussed in the staff report. Existing structures on the property include a main dwelling with a covered deck at the front, a sleeping cabin with decks, a shed, and a dock. And according to assessment information, there is a dwelling and 2 sleeping cabins to exist on the property circa 1960. The second sleeping cabin was removed earlier this summer as it was falling apart. The application was submitted in order to permit a sleeping cabin to be located and expanded within the shoreline development area, to recognize the front and side yard setbacks of a covered patio at the front of the dwelling, and to reduce the required shoreline buffer area. So again, the assessment here notes that the existing structures on the property predate the zoning bylaw from 1960. So it's hard to see there, but that dashed line is actually the 20-meter setback to the optimal summer water level, and then back 30. And the sleeping cabin permitted in the shoreline development area and to be expanded is here on screen. It should be noted, though, that the original application was circulated with a reduced shoreline buffer area of 72.3%, where the zoning bylaw requires 75%. So that was one of the requests before made to the town and circulated to neighboring property owners. However, it was confirmed this morning that the property actually has a current shoreline buffer area that's only 64.7, and it's proposed to improve to 68.6%. However, though, because the application was circulated with a larger number and staff are now aware of the actual existing situation, although improving is less than what was circulated, staff are of the opinion to be in accordance with the requirements of the application, that the application needs to be recirculated with the proper relief requested. As discussed in the staff report, there were earlier comments from the chief building official who had concerns with the existing septic system. However, the applicant's agent did confirm that as a result of the changes on the property, a new system will have to be put in place. So that addresses the chief buildings official's concerns. They no longer have concerns with the application from that perspective. However, staff still have the concern with the requested relief for the 75% reduction down to now 68.6. And because that wasn't circulated, staff are recommending that the application be deferred so that a proper recirculation to the neighboring property owners to understand the actual relief that's being sought be done. I'll just take you through some site photos here. So this is looking down the driveway at the rear of the dwelling. The property is well vegetated in this area. This is then getting onto the dock, naturally occurring sandy beach. You can see the neighbor has a beach as well, but this then just gives you context to how close the proposal is to the water. This is then looking from the deck to the neighboring property south. And then this is the location of the existing sleeping cabin, which is seeking to be permitted in the shoreline development area. It's already existing there and expanded upon. You can also then see to the right of your screen, the natural shoreline has remained to the right. And then this is done just standing in that envelope, looking at the visual buffer there from that sleeping cabin. And this is approximately the location where the expansions to occur. And again, this photo here is just showing more vegetation. So here's an area on the site where the applicants are proposing to revegetate. Understanding that currently right now they're at 64.7% of shoreline buffer area, and they've proposed areas where they can replant where possible, understanding that they are constrained by existing development that's on the property already. This patio is also proposed to be removed and replanting to happen there. It's hard to see, but the applicant's agent has done a job to help staff and talk about areas that will be replanted. So specifically Area 5, that's where you saw that stone patio. That's now going to be removed and replanted. Area 6 was the area beside the dwelling, which is to be replanted as well in an effort to increase the shoreline buffer, trying to get closer to the 75% requirement. So again, because that dashed line is the 20-meter setback, and the zoning bylaw requires that properties maintain 75% natural shorelines within 20 meters of the water, you can see that given the existing development, they're unable to meet that. In saying that, it's staff's opinion that deferring a decision in light of the new information received today is appropriate, so staff can confirm consistency with the provincial policy statement, conformity to the official plan, and appropriateness, and also ensure that the application is circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you. I will now ask for any comments by Bobby Leppington, the agent, who has pre-registered to participate electronically. Bobby, please ensure your camera and microphone are turned on and press the speak icon and follow with your comments, please. Okay, so she's not here. These are, I think, some of the hiccups that, we don't know what's happened, but we haven't heard. Okay, so we think she's decided not to attend. So I will ask, though, if there are any comments from the applicants, if they're here in person at all. Okay. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public attending in person? Okay, I don't see any. Council, are there any questions for our Manager of Planning Services? Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, it's more of a comment than a question. May I proceed? Yep.
Yep, we'll just ask that person to turn their phone off, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. This is not a large development, but the comment I want to make is that I support the deferral because I'm concerned about the shoreline buffer. That's quite a significant difference. And having a brief conversation with Manager Eger before the meeting, and again, I reiterate, this is not a big development here, but if you continue to add or make exceptions for small properties, they add up. And the comment I made to Mr. Eger was that a death of 1,000 cuts, or a death of 1,000 cuts still results in death. And if we keep adding exemptions on shoreline buffers without regard to the consequence of the cumulative amount, it will have an impact on the lake. So I just wanted to make that comment, Your Worship, and thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Councillor, are there any other questions? We can discuss the bylaw at the bylaw stage, debate the bylaw at bylaw stage. Are there any other questions for Mr. Eger? Okay, Mr. Eger, are there any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council as a result of these proceedings?
Your worship, as detailed in the staff report and in light of the information received by staff today, staff are recommending that the application be deferred.
Okay. The bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. But I will ask if everybody can turn off their devices and their volume on their devices. I find it very distracting. So, public meeting number 3. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be public meeting to deal with application number ZA 25-2024, 283-6924, Ontario Inc. I will now ask the manager of planning services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Ager.
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located on Lake Muskoka. The property is designated waterfront area in the official plan and is zoned residential waterfront, RW6D in the town zoning bylaw, and as discussed in the staff report. The property is currently vacant and slopes steeply upward from the shoreline in what can be described as exposed rock cliff, with isolated pockets of vegetation beyond the top of the slope. There is a plateau where a dwelling and septic are proposed to be located. This area is flat, well vegetated, and contains stable soils of moderate depth. The application was submitted in order to recognize the existing lot area so that the property is eligible for building permits and to permit a reduced rear yard setback of 9 meters. A planning justification report was prepared by Plan Muskoka in support of the application. And further to that, for background, council may be familiar with the area. We've dealt with a number of other properties along this shoreline who all benefited from a water quality impact assessment that was completed by Riverstone in 2013. And that was because there was a string of properties in the area. I'll actually just back up. A string of properties in the area that were of similar size and all had a holding provision on them that was specifically holding provision H12. And that was because at that time, Muskoka Bay was considered over threshold at that time based on the water quality modeling that the district was doing at that time. Since then, the area is no longer over threshold. We now use a different system for lake health, and in addition to that, the holding provision has been removed. But we do benefit from the information that was received in that water quality impact assessment, which stated that development can occur on the property and be sited at a distance 30 meters or greater back. So you'll see here the 30-meter shoreline buffer area, and the development and building envelope is cited farther than 30 meters, and they're requesting relief for a 9-meter rear yard setback. In this case, staff are of the opinion that the reduced rear yard setback is appropriate, as in this case, it's citing development farther away from the water and achieving our overall environmental goals, and the septic will be in that similar location as well. In addition to that, there were comments received, and I will get to the comments received, but there is proposed shoreline structures on this property as well. It should be noted that they're proposed subject to the standard zoning requirements. The abutting neighbor to the north had concerns with potential impacts on access to their boathouse, given its historical location in a wind-protected cove. This is a conceptual drawing provided by the applicant's agent that shows the proposed shoreline structures located away from that at the south side of the property, and therefore staff actually included a setback in the special provision of the bylaw to ensure that development for the shoreline structure would occur in that location and not closer to the neighbor who had those concerns. So that's worth mentioning too. So the zoning bylaw relief that's requested here is for lot area and a reduced setback, and as a result of comments, which the applicant's agent and the applicant had no objections to, also included additional provision which would aid in the situation of an increased setback from a neighboring lot line there. And you can see it on screen there at 13 meters where 6 meters is normally required, 13.2 meters, and you'll see 6 meters. So that dashed line is showing where the envelope could be. However, it's been written into the proposed zoning bylaw amendment that setback is actually going to have to be 13.2 meters, resulting in a greater setback. At the time of writing the report, the chief building official, the infrastructure technologist, and the fire and emergency services had no objections, subject to compliance with Ontario Fire and Building Code. The deputy treasurer and the district of Muskoka had no objections to the proposed applications. In addition, comments were received from neighboring property owners, all of which were circulated to council for the review and consideration. To summarize the comments, there were general concerns about the intensification and precedent it sets for the neighborhood and the variation over 35% of what's permitted. The 35% comments with respect to the minimum lot area. So our zoning bylaw does allow for existing lots of record to be developed as long as they're 3,000 square meters in area. And in this case, the report does not. The subject property is about 1,900 square meters. But again, we've dealt with applications similarly before this planning council looking for similar relief to establish building rights on these properties. The comments received that the proposed boathouse will interfere with their existing boathouse and dock area where they've enjoyed the privacy, unhindered water activity since the 1970s, and does not take into the existence of a rock shoal that requires boat access to the boathouse, and that there needs to be a very wide berth around that area. And with respect to that, as pointed out here, in addition to the relief that's being sought for lot area and the reduced rear yard setback, staff have included that increased setback to address that. And lastly, there was that same letter received representing 60 cottage owners concerned about the possibility of using this lot as a gateway to the back lot that was before council today. In response to these comments, staff confirmed that reviewing the applications to recognize the undersized lot criteria used to evaluate the appropriateness of the proposal, such as septic and building envelope locations and suitability, and that no negative impacts on potential environmental features are present. And in this case, the proposed development that's on screen there is supported by that water quality impact assessment that was done in 2013. Which said that development can occur beyond 30 meters, and here on screen depicts a greater setback than 30 meters for both the dwelling and the septic bed with that reduced rear yard setback there. Moving into site photos, this is looking at the southeastern lot line. This shows the general topography of the lot, and then beyond kind of the ridge would then be the steep cliff and the top of slope. This is then standing on the top of slope looking out to west to Lake Muskoka. This is looking west along the shoreline. Again, the area is generalized as the steep rock that you see on screen here. This is then standing on the neighbor's dock, which staff received permission to do so, looking at the shoreline of the subject property. This is another vantage point from the neighbor's dock, which again, staff received permission to stand on their dock and observe the area, and also, more importantly, observe the rock shoal there that you can see on screen. And this shows the rock shelf that extends from the neighboring dock, which concerns have been expressed about. And again, the zoning bylaw now, staff are recommending incorporates that 13.2 meter setback from the neighboring lot line, ensuring that the proposed boathouse won't be at 6 meters, it'll be at 13.2 meters farther away from the situation, mitigating those impacts. As a result, it's staff's opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the official plan, is appropriate, and represents good planning. Staff are recommending that the application be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, we're going to go to Agent Savas Veratis. You can turn your camera on and microphone on and press the speak icon. Follow with your comments. Welcome back.
Thank you, members of council. Again, my name is Savas Veratis from Plan Muskoka, and I'm here representing the applicant as their agent. I, again, do not have very much to add to Adam's presentation. He covered everything off comprehensively, and I agree with staff's recommendation on this matter. I think this is somewhat technical of an application because when the holding was lifted around 10 years ago, when the water quality assessment was completed, it probably should have been also providing development rights to the properties it was lifting the holding from. But as a result of it not doing that, this is what this application here in front of council is aiming to do. The rear yard setback is a pretty minor exception, and it just meant to carry forward the building envelope that Riverstone Environmental had in their report for this property. When it was cited on to the existing survey information, it was just found to be slightly different than the GIS system property limits for the property, and it resulted in the need for a rear yard setback just to bring forward that same building envelope. The applicants have no intention of blasting this property, and that rock ridge would remain intact as it's fully within the 30-meter shoreline buffer that's required by the Riverstone Environmental Report, and it's being implemented by this proposal. Again, they also didn't object to the shifting or increased side yard setback for the shoreline structures from the northern property line in order to address the comments received from the northerly adjacent property that the construction of a boathouse would impact their access to their boathouse. So I think that shows willingness to work with the neighbors on this property, and also to address the concerns raised by their neighboring property owner. So I don't think I really have anything else further to add, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will now go to the applicants. Okay, Matthew, you want to turn your camera on and your microphone on and press the speak button. Follow with your comments, please.
Hello, Matthew Baldacero here. I agree with everything Savas and Adam have previously stated. I don't have anything necessarily else to add. If there are any questions, you can direct them towards Savas, and he can kind of speak on our behalf. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we don't see Dan, so we'll just skip him. Okay. Now, are there any questions or comments from members of the public attending in person? If so, please stand, approach the podium, give your name and full mailing address, and follow with your comments.
I do have visuals to show, so if you can bear with me for half a second so I can get that set. Okay. Your worship, members of council, staff, and members of the public. That's okay. We're not ready just yet. That's fine. That's fine. My name is Robert Cherendoff. I represent my mother, Evelyn Cherendoff, who owns our family cottage at 1323 Bryden Bay Road, Lot 22, which borders the lot beneficially owned by the Baldacero family through Ontario Corporation 2836924. My home address in Toronto is 51 Hendrick Avenue, Toronto, Ontario, postal code M6G3S4. In this application, the Baldaceros propose to build a boathouse in a space that will block access to our existing boathouse and dock area, where we have enjoyed privacy and unhindered water activity since the mid-1970s. The map included in their application does not show this encroachment. It also does not take into account the existence of an underwater rock shoal that extends beyond the tip area indicated that requires any boater wanting access to our boathouse and or dock to take a very wide berth around the area into our cove, which might fairly be described as a narrow waterway. A boater attempting to steer clear of the shoal will likely be impeded by the Baldacero boathouse. With the possibility of added boat traffic in this narrow waterway, we fear that the likelihood of collisions will increase, swimming will be negatively impacted, and safety will be compromised. While you have graphics provided with the application, I will show them for your convenience, as we can see already. You will see that the images presented are skewed and misleading, and if the proposed boathouse were constructed, it will severely impact our access to our property. Their photograph, which highlights the boathouse area in purple, is also skewed and misleading, as it cuts off where our boathouse and dock exist and thus avoids showing the extent of the encroachment. I'm going to show that after. Yeah, sorry. I'm going to show the graphics and the visuals in a moment. The highlighted area that supposedly shows how far the boathouse would extend into the lake is inaccurate, as no boathouse could fit in that space, and actually, it would reach significantly further into the lake. By this diagram, it shows 33 feet, and threatens to block access to our property through a narrow waterway. I have additional photographs that better show the area, including the boathouse, our boathouse and dock area for true perspective. So, let's just start this. So this is the diagram that we have all seen. And now we can see how, where our dock and boathouse actually exist. And we can also see the shoal that is actually even further extending outward, submerged under the water that you cannot see. I also will show a video of a family boat coming into our dock area using the wide berth necessary given the current topology, as well as attempting dock, assuming the existence of the proposed boathouse, which would prevent that previous angle of approach. It is our intention that to show how the existence of the proposed boathouse will impede our ability to access, as we have for 48 years. So this is the other diagram that we all have seen, and again, that purple area down here is, I do not believe, anywhere close to 33 feet as shown in the diagram. This is a photograph taken actually this morning from our dock, and I appreciate Angela Giacattis for going to our property with my permission and doing an additional survey to see and observe exactly what we have been saying. So you can see that we're talking about a much closer proximity within the inlet than is otherwise perceived. Other pictures. This shows the extension of the rock shoal. We saw a picture earlier that Ms. Giacattis did take, and this, not sure if you can really tell, but that does extend quite a bit further out underwater. A picture from the deck of our boathouse, again, just to show how tight this area is from the water. And from the cliff looking down. So you can see, again, this is very, very close. So this video shows a family boat coming into our dock using the typical berth that it has used and requires over time. You will notice that a note on this is that this is an average size boat, relatively calm conditions, with an experienced driver. It does not take into account windy, rough conditions, which would make it indeed more difficult. And with another boat that a member of our family, which is a pontoon boat owned by someone who is further out into in the bay, would never be able to do, to come into our dock without this. Let me just go forward to the next one, if I can figure that out. Unfortunately, I'm having a little difficulty. Wait, there we go. Okay, this is going to show this is going to show an angle that would be more likely taken if the boat was going to have to avoid the proposed boathouse, and in fact, I'm not sure that this isn't still going through the boathouse if it were existing at the time. You will see that it's a little bit more difficult. Once again, a larger boat would not be able to make this happen. And if we were to add swimmers and waves from lake traffic going in and out of the Narrows, this is going to make it that much more difficult. Here we're having a difficulty, it's not working. Okay. So, for the reasons stated above, we urge the town to reject the application to approve the proposed boathouse. We do appreciate Angela Jakatis and going to our property, and as a result, extending the setback to 13.2 meters, but however, with due respect, we are skeptical that is still not enough, and we would perhaps defer so that a proper study could be completed, taking proper measurements and real-life approaches. I believe that's everything I have to say. Thank you very much. Again, Bob Cherndorf, and I thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from any other members of the public who'd like to speak to this application? Okay. And please just state your name and your mailing address, please.
Sure, this is on, yeah. Gary Fenton, 1063 Old Portage Road. I'm going to use some audio visuals here as well, if you don't mind. Get this going. Oh, HDMI. Sorry? Let me see, I may have an HDMI to USB. 1 second. Or can somebody else project? Okay. 1 second.
Okay, well, while you guys are doing that, do you mind if we put it to the rest of the gallery and ask if there's somebody else who wants to go while you guys are doing that? Yeah, just to keep things moving here. Is there anybody else who wanted to speak? No, okay, so that backfired a bit. So we'll just take a minute. We might as well take the opportunity to take 5 minutes and stretch our legs for a minute, and we'll come right back in 5 minutes. Okay, we're back. We got it all figured out? Okay, we'll give it a try.
Plan A here. Plan B is we'll use Bob's PC, but I think, there we go. It's showing.
Okay,
Good.
great.
Good being the IT guy. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity and sorry for the delay in getting set up here. Appreciate your patience. So again, on this property, what I did, much like Bob, we didn't coordinate this.
Sorry, excuse me, I just need your name and mailing address before you get started.
Okay, I did that previously. Gary Fenton,
Okay,
1063 Old Portage Road.
Okay, great.
So what I did is just took a few pictures of the subject property as well. So you will see here, this, basically the Scharndorf's cottage is to the left of this. And the property, oh, okay, so here's a better picture. This is what Bob was really talking about as well. With that boathouse set in there, it really is right in line with his existing boathouse and swimming area, recreation area. One of the things I wanted to point out here was just the slope on this cliff. So the cliff gets a little steeper to the right, but from approximately this point here, where the property would be, to the left to the Scharndorf's property, it is quite a gradient. It's probably greater than 60 degrees. And much of that shoreline setback is very steep, sloping cliff down towards the lake. You can see on the right, there's another property being developed right now, which is maintaining the appropriate setbacks and so forth. But again, I'm going to raise concerns about drainage and proximity. This gives a good setback shot of the little cove. So there's a little ecosystem in here. It's been untouched for forever, millennia. But the thing is, it is a little cove. There's one cottage that's exposed to it right now, which is the Scharndorf's. There will be this other cottage that has a boathouse in it that's set quite a bit away because there is a vacant lot between the two, the subject property and the current building lot going on to the right here. But it is quite a fragile ecosystem. Witness deer and things crossing the lake and climbing up those cliffs. And yes, it's Lake Muskoka. We're going to build, we're going to develop property. But one of my concerns about this lot as well is it doesn't meet the minimum square footage for a building lot. This is an example of the property that you saw being built to the right of the lot prior picture. And this is pretty much a clear cut. What they've done, that was a heavily treed property. I don't have a picture I can present right now that shows the forestation of this lot beforehand, but it's pretty much a clear cut and blast from the perimeter of the lot. I'm not even sure if they maintained the built outside or blasted or clear cut outside of the permissible package area. But my concern here is this now slopes down to the lake. You can see there's quite a natural slope there. Plus now there's no natural vegetation, trees, roots, anything to absorb that moisture and wick it away before it drains into the lake. Just another vantage point. I'm standing on my lot taking a picture of this, and the subject property is 2 lots over towards to the right of the picture. So my concern really here is, number one, lot size. So we have 1/3 less property than they should have to actually develop and build this property. In one of the notifications, it talked about a compound. So I really question the intended use. And again, is it a gateway for all of these subdivided lots to come and get access to the lake? Further, enhancing the impact to the water, just the traffic, the number of things, just congestion, as well as noise. The natural cove there provides quite an echo chamber if there's noise in that area. Proximity to the existing structure, I think we've covered that. typo there. And then there's also a request for an easement on the rear setback because of the smaller lot. They're looking to, I think it's just 1 meter, but every bit counts. So a 1 meter setback for their septic system and their building lot. What we're doing here, and I heard it mentioned in the last or one of the prior sessions, it's about establish or reinforcing a precedence for variances. There is a well-developed plan for the town, and there's a minimum lot size required to actually build and have that look and feel. Instead of intensification and population on small packages of property, plus the additional issue around, the intended use for this, is it a gateway to the lake? I have real concerns about the development of this property. So setback, steep slope. We talked about the 30-meter setback. Now, I would imagine that would be 30 meters of, lawn, terrain, vegetation that would absorb any runoff before it gets to the lake. I think there's almost a special circumstance that you would have to apply here, in that anything that gets in that last, at least half of that is running right into the lake. It's just rocks. There's a few trees up that cliff, but there's a lot of rock there. So I have a real concern about drainage and the lack of vegetation to absorb that, especially when the lot gets developed. I've mentioned noise and acoustics in the cove. And just in general, just maintaining the natural visual and aesthetic character of the lake and the shoreline. We see these monster homes going up on these lots, building very close to the cliff, and it's quite an atrocity. I like development and progression, but it has to be in concert with the existing environment and what's been there for years. And yes, building bigger footprints, but it can't be an eyesore as you drive down the lake. I think we talked about the mooring, and I just want to add to that, people have this, we talked about the 13-meter setback for the boathouse, but most people then moor boats on the side, and they put boat lifts in and jet ski lifts, and they build out upon that footprint once the residence is developed and established. I heard no blasting intent. I don't know if that is stipulated somewhere, that if that's the intent now, it actually doesn't occur, so I don't have a clear-cut lot like the 1-2 lots over next to me. And again, the variants, they all add up. Death by 1,000 cuts. This isn't, 10 square meters or 100 square meters under what is required to build. It's more than 1,000 square meters. It's 1/3 less. I think that's hits the threshold where we have to draw a line and say, what, that's maybe a little excessive to want to build on these lots. People buy these lots, they come in with the intention, they'll get the approval and move straight forward and, create something that's not in the current town plan. Mention the fragile ecosystem, water quality, and that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, I think we established before there was no other members from the public, but if there are, please come forward. Okay, seeing none. So, council, I'll throw it to you. Keep in mind, these are questions for the applicant or our planner, anyone who's made presentations, and there would be time for debate amongst ourselves at the bylaw stage. So, Councillor Hunter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. My question is to Mr. Egger about the rock outcropping. Is there, or do we take that into account, and is there a study or something that we can draw from to show the depth of the rocks that are in that area for safety purposes?
Mr. Egger?
Sorry, through you to Councillor Hunter, Your Worship. Are you referring to the rocks in the water? Unfortunately, there are not. A survey of the area would be able to include that, but given that they're not present on the subject property, we're not able to impose conditions on other lands. They would just be the property subject to the application. In saying that, the increased setback to that north lot line being increased to 13.23 meters is an increase from the regular 6 meters, and that's then the maximum distance pushing it south, because that's still then maintaining the minimum requirement of 6 meters to the other lot line. If they were to push it any further to potentially mitigate impacts of boat traffic in that area, the applicant would need to amend their application and request then relief for a structure to be located closer to the south. That's not part of their application, and they have not indicated they've wished to do so, but I would defer to their agent if they had any more commentary on that.
Okay. Council, any other questions? Councillor Strength?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Egger. Can you just remind me how let me back up for a minute. So in the drawing, it shows that the shoreline buffer is 30 meters, and then there's a number on the side of the drawing that says 58.7. So does that mean that it's 58.7 meters from the shoreline, or does the ledge of the rock face factor into that number?
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Strength. Actually, if the clerk could please put that drawing back up. Thank you. It is a bit misleading. So 58.7 or 55.3 is the depth of the entire lot. The shoreline buffer of 30 meters is that dashed line you'll see off to the left-hand side where you see the number 58.7. In addition to that, it's worth mentioning the zoning bylaw right now requires a shoreline buffer, we heard earlier today, of 20 meters. However, based on that Riverstone report that was done in 2013, it recommended that the shoreline buffer be increased to 30 meters. So now we're talking about a 30-meter shoreline buffer, where typically right now the shoreline buffer is only 20 meters. So now it's farther away. No alteration or disturbance can happen within that shoreline buffer, and that's how that's measured.
Councillor Varney?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. And I'm looking at the diagram as well, and I'm just wondering, I mean, have the applicants suggested that maybe they would, this looks like a boathouse. Would they consider, I mean, would it make any difference if it was a boathouse, that would give more room for the problem with the traffic? Thank you.
Certainly. Your Worship.
Mr. Egger?
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Varney. Staff did have discussions with the applicant's agent. That's how we arrived at that increased setback. There was never discussions about decreasing the boathouse size. They're obviously limited based on the amount of frontage they have for the boathouse policies on Lake Muskoka, but there was no conversation about a single slip, and I would defer to the applicant. They were amenable to that increased setback that staff have recommended based on the neighbors' concerns, but there's been no other conversations with respect to the actual boathouse design, whether it be one slip or two.
Okay, so I understand that the agent is still hanging on to hear what's happening here. So, Mr. Veratis, is there something that you would want to add?
Sure, through you, Madam Mayor. I never had a conversation with the applicants in terms of reducing their right to the width of a boathouse or a dock or a combination of both that they'd be permitted on their property. What you see in the sketch there is basically a conceptual plan of how a more or less maximum size width boathouse and dock structure could look like on the property. It was naturally put as far south as it could have been just because of the proximity to the landform to the north, and that's why one of the reasons why it was not objected to when staff suggested that they were looking to increase the side yard setback from the north to I guess mitigate those concerns. I tend to think that this has been like a fair compromise that has been made by the applicant, because they do have development rights normally for waterfront properties. They weren't asking for anything more, no variances for an increased projection or a decreased side yard setback was requested as part of this. They were just simply showing what the rights of the zoning bylaw would normally permit for the property and just position the building as far away from the neighboring property as possible in order to mitigate their concerns. So, it is unfortunate that the neighbor has to cross in front of this property to access their boathouse to the north. I I tend to think that the proposal to make it 13.2 meters would give them enough room to still maneuver their boat. It may maybe not be the exact way that they've done it, currently or historically, but these lots were laid down as a land plan and subdivision at the same time as their lot was being created. And basically, what we're just trying to do is give the right to this property that was supposed to be granted 10 years ago when the holding was lifted. And it's of a size and shape and orientation very similar to all the other lots in the area. So it's not by any means the significantly smaller than everything else around it. They're all similar in size and similar in character. So, I think the application in front of council is fair. And I think the compromise being made by the applicant did not have to be agreed upon, but has been done so in order to just move this along and be as neighborly as possible. So that's all I really have to add. Thank you.
Councillor Cairns?
Thank you, Worship, and through you. I just wonder if there's been a projection done. So if you look at the map or the drawing of the property and you see the loop to the left, and I'm assuming, and I just need clarification, is that the rock that we're seeing with that outline of the line? And have we done a projection from which I don't know if we do this or not, but from there to the boathouse, the new boathouse, so on that angle of where it's going to be located on this map? So I'm not sure if you get what I say, but from the rock, the point of the rock where you can't drive your boat over, to the corner of the new proposed boathouse, what is the distance in between? Safely can they get in? Because I don't want to approve this if that boathouse will then be not able to be accessed, whether it be safely or not. So I'm not sure if that's a question that I could ask at this time.
I'm going to go back to the agent, Mr. Radis. Oh, I think I just hung up on you. You can just press your microphone. There you are. Great.
Perfect. Through you, Madam Worship, I don't have an exact measurement, but just looking at the plan, I could say that it with a good degree of accuracy that it would be approximately 13 or 14 meters. So it would be close to 50 feet from the edge of that rock to the closest point of the proposed boathouse. And this was based on the subdivision plan survey that was, that describes the property when it was laid down and created some time ago. So that's the information that we have in front of us here today.
Thank you. So staff concurs that it's approximately 50 feet, I would imagine, and that they, a pontoon boat, as they had stated, they have a pontoon boat to dock, as well as their smaller vessel that they showed in the diagram. I just want to be sure that we're not going to landlock this boathouse from being able to be utilized as they have for several years. Thank you.
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Cairns. Without actually knowing the extent of where that rock shoal goes, we don't have that information available to us, aside from what Mr. Veratis has said. However, aside from making a wide turn and coming in, as we saw in the video, you could conceivably drive a boat straight through there and then utilize reverse maneuvers to get in and out of that space, conceivably. But without knowing where the extent of that rock shoal is and that distance is, we wouldn't be able to provide concrete numbers differing or confirming Mr. Veratis's. It's also worth noting that the application that's before you today really is just to confer the lot area and rear yard setback for the property. In 2013, when that water quality impact assessment was done and the zoning was lifted to remove that H, the intent was actually to grant development rights not only to this property but neighboring properties. And so we've been incrementally going through, as the properties have now changed hands, to reinstate those development rights that were originally intended to be granted in 2013.
A subsequent, Councillor Cairns?
Thank you, and I know this will be at the bylaw state, but I really think that I know staff has done their due diligence. I just really worry that if we pass this and then there's not access to get in, so I would probably suggest that the bylaw state that we have a deferral, and while the weather's still good, we get out there and measure to be sure that the projected new boathouse corner to the edge of the rock cut where the deepest or the highest portion of the rock so that a boat can get over it with the motor safely. I think we could do a measurement of some sort just to be sure that we're not landlocking this boathouse that exists at the neighbors. Sure if this is the present time to do that or.
Mr. Veratus, did you want to answer that? Oh, sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Maybe staff would like to jump in on this one too, but this property is, as far as I know, is subject to site plan control. So any positioning and design of any boathouse on this property would still require to go through staff in order to be eligible for a building permit. I think some of the design details that are being discussed here today could be solidified at that point in time. Like Mr. Ager has said, this application is just basically recognizing this property as a building envelope or as a building lot, as was intended about over 10 years ago. So I think that level of degree of design could be handled at the site plan control stage, but if staff feels otherwise, you know, they can jump in. Thank you.
Okay. I did note that one of the property owners has turned his camera on. Did you want to add something? You can just give a thumbs up or no, or we can. We just need you to press request to speak. There we go. Okay, go ahead and put your camera on. Yeah. Great.
Hello.
Hello.
I don't necessarily have anything too much to add other than we are reasonable people. So, you know, if there ever was an issue, we'd be willing to work with the neighbors to kind of address their boat getting into their boathouse. Obviously, we're not going to try and build something that hinders that. As long as there is a way in there for them, we're reasonable and we're willing to work with them and staff as well to, or council as well, to make sure that that's a possibility. So that's all I have to add for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor, are there any other questions? I have one. Can we put up a picture of where the proposed boathouse is going on the property as far as where we expect that it's going to go? Look, even on that, I think that's a good spot. Is there some sort of way to indicate to us where you expect the corner of the boathouse to go, Mr. Ager? I think it's hard to visualize what it's supposed to look like. I know we're roughing it, I get it, but if you could just estimate where you think, and I guess what you would say is 6 meters off the side closest to me, like.
That's correct. So the first caveat I'm going to say is this is an air photo and the lot lines are potentially skewed. So this isn't a perfect overlay. It's not the survey plan. So this is just our aerial photography and the lot fabric that we get from MPAC and a highlighted area. So this isn't 100% accurate. Our understanding is it's going to be 6 meters approximately from the red line to the south with the intention of in that inlet or cove area, so siting it in that sort of land depression to get it as far back into the property as possible and not sticking out to the south end. As you can see, the shoreline now then projects further into the water. So the idea or our understanding is that they're trying to tuck it away in that piece as close into land as possible, which you can kind of make out as where the red line, and there's now water on the inside of the red line. That's kind of that area.
Okay, and just one other question before, maybe it'll trigger another question from anybody else, but am I understanding that the discussion here really is that distance from the water. Like, is the boathouse is as proposed, is legal, is it? Can you just explain that?
Absolutely. So in 2013, Your Worship, when the water quality impact assessment was done and development rights were intended to be granted to this property along with its neighboring properties, yes, boathouses on this lot and the lots to the south would all be permitted as of right and meet our standard requirements for Lake Muskoka. So depending on your frontage, you're allowed a certain amount of shoreline development width. You're allowed to project up to 15 meters out. In saying that, the nuance to this application is right now, because this property is undersized because of an error that happened in 2013, now looking for development rights on this property would then enable them to build the boathouse. So by recognizing the undersized lot area, they are trying to now build or suggesting or showing a proposal for a boathouse that would be in compliance with the zoning bylaw.
Okay. Counselor, are there any other questions before we move on to number 4, public meeting number 4? Okay, so I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA 26-2024 for Poulter. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't wrap up the last one. Oh, I got a little ahead of myself. Thank you. This is, the clerk is keeping me in line. Thank you. Mr. Ager, as a result of the previous proceedings, are there any recommendations that you'd like to bring to the attention of council?
Thank you, Your Worship. As detailed in the staff report, staff are recommending that the application be approved.
Okay, and so I did forget to cap it off, Madam Clerk. Please forgive me. The bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. So I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA 26-2024 for Poulter. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Ager.
Thank you, Your Worship. This property too is located on Lake Muskoka and is accessed from Sunny Bay Lane. Sorry, I lost my microphone. The property is designated residential waterfront RW6A, subject to special provision 598 in the town zoning bylaw, and is designated waterfront area as discussed in the staff report. The property is currently developed with a detached dwelling, an attached deck, sleeping cabin, shed, sports court, boathouse, and dock. The property is generally well vegetated with mature trees and undergrowth outside the existing developed areas. The topography of the property is relatively flat in the central area, sloping downwards towards the shoreline. Steeper slopes were noted in varying locations, including around the existing sports court at the rear of the shoreline area. The application was submitted in order to construct an addition to the existing dwelling. If approved, the amending zoning bylaw would permit the following relief: an eastern side lot line setback of 4.2 meters for a dwelling where 6 meters is required, an eastern side lot setback of 3.9 meters for an attached deck where 6 meters is required, and a minimum setback of 13.4 meters from a watercourse being Lake Muskoka on the abutting eastern property where 30 meters is required and 23.2 meters is existing. And this is a unique situation that I might go back and forth between the air photos and the site diagram to show you what's happening here. So the dwelling addition is happening on this portion of the property to the dwelling. You're hearing two different setbacks. One is for the dwelling setback at 4.2, the other is for a covered deck. The intention of separating those provisions is to ensure that a dwelling then couldn't be expanded in the future to a lesser setback. So it's just clearly defining how close the dwelling can get to the neighboring side yard lot line and how close then a deck can get, and treat the two separately. In addition to that, when we get to the water setback and we understand that the dwelling addition is getting closer to Lake Muskoka, as the lot is generally developed, the lot would meet the zoning bylaw requirements of 30-meter setback from the water, as you see Lake Muskoka's here. But because the shoreline has a unique topography, you can see that Lake Muskoka also wraps around the property to the right-hand side on the east, and there's actually a neighboring property, that sliver of land here. And so that dwelling addition that's happening here is getting closer to the lake, but it actually is running through a neighboring property at the same time. So the zoning bylaw doesn't delineate, it just says if you're getting closer to the optimal summer water level within 30 meters, you need relief. Understanding that they already technically are deficient from that setback right now. In saying that, the purpose of these setbacks for side yard lot lines is to make sure that properties don't interfere with one another. The property to the east is already developed, and you can see, given that that extension on the right-hand side is a quite narrow portion, no development could ever be sited in this area because they would not be able to meet the water setback nor the rear yard setback or any setback. So from that perspective, staff are satisfied, but providing relief for the dwelling to expand closer to the lot line red highlighted there is appropriate, as there's not going to be an interference with neighboring properties. In addition to that, the relief requested to reduce the setback to the optimal summer water level, we'll see in the site photos here, and the applicants also provided a rendering, that area is densely vegetated. So from a visual impact perspective of the lake, staff are not anticipating any adverse impacts. And as the property relates to itself, it's still going to be set back beyond 30 meters where it's being developed if you're looking out to the lake, the way the lot lines run. So here's the entrance into the property. You can see the dwelling and one of the outbuildings. The sports court is up on the slope to your left. You can kind of see in the distance there's yellow tape. The applicants did go out on site and mark the area where the development is going to be occurring. So moving in now closer onto the gravel driveway, you can see where that addition is occurring. Then moving into that envelope. So beyond that is the neighboring property to the right-hand side, which is densely vegetated. This is the extent of the boundary, and beyond that, approximately 3.9 meters would then be neighboring lands before you then get to the water. And then this is then standing there again, showing that visual impact of the lake. This is then moving down to the applicant's waterfront area, looking back towards where the addition is going to be occurring. So the dwellings here and the additions occurring in this area around where the hot tub is seen there. It's also worth noting here, you can see the red property stake there. So everything left of the screen is actually neighboring lands, and you can see there's no existing development or buildings located in proximity to that area. And then this is looking farther along that shoreline. You can see the dense vegetation that would be buffering the proposed development. Again, no buildings or structures in that area, so it's unlikely that the reduced setback is going to interfere with the neighboring property. And then lastly, this was a rendering that the applicant provided to the best of their abilities, imposing the building approximately into that area, so it's generally in keeping with the massing and size of the existing dwelling that's there, and the vegetation in the areas to remain. I didn't talk about agency comments, but the chief building official, infrastructure technologist, manager of revenue, deputy fire chief, and district of Muskoka had no objections to the proposed application. It's also worth mentioning that the neighboring property owners at 1020 and 1040 Sunny Bay Lane provided letters of support for the application, and those were circulated to council for their consideration. As a result, it's staff's opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to the official plan, is appropriate, and represents good planning, and staff are recommending approval of the application. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Egger. Now, I'll ask if the agent or applicant has a presentation they'd like to make.
Is there a talk button? Nope, it's good.
You're all set.
I'm Jay from SML Contracting, and I am the agent for the owners. I believe this presentation that we've already witnessed has been fantastic. I'm here to answer questions if there are any, but aside from that.
Okay, thank you. Great, so that brings us to the end of our public, no, it doesn't, sorry. I don't know why I'm so discombobulated today. Yeah. Okay, so are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this application? Okay, seeing none. Council, it's your opportunity to ask members of anybody who's made a presentation. We either have Manager Ager or the agent. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Ager, are there any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council as a result of these proceedings?
Your worship, as detailed in the staff report, staff are recommending that the application be approved.
Okay, the bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be completed. Okay, so moving right along, we're going to go into unfinished business. Zoning Amendment 2024 for Seoul Baseline. I think we're familiar with that. Report number DEV 2024-84. It's moved by Councillor Johnston, second by Councillor Strength. Be it resolved that report number DEV 2024-84, REZA 2024 Seoul Baseline be received for information. Okay, Mr. Ager, you're going to take this? Great.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief in my presentation, as this is now the third time this property has been before council. The application was submitted in order to legalize existing structures on the property, some of which were built without a building permit, which I'm sure you all remember. In accordance with the staff recommendation, council deferred a decision of the application at the August 27th meeting in order for the applicant to satisfy the chief building official by addressing old permits on the property. It should be noted the shed has now been demolished and additional inspections have occurred. The chief building official is now satisfied to move forward with this application, which will allow the proposed addition to be in compliance with the zoning bylaw. If you want, I can jog your memory on site photos again, or as a result of those changes, that was really why we were recommending deferral of the application to address the chief building official's concerns, one of which was that shed that had been expanded upon, which has now been removed, and the inspections are now occurring on the portion of the dwelling here towards moving into compliance now from a building code perspective, and this application would then seek to recognize the zoning relief required to make these dwellings both legal from a building perspective and a zoning perspective. Now staff are recommending the application be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, so this is a little different than the public meeting because we already have had the public meeting, just for members of the public that are here for this. So, council, are there any questions on Mr. Ager's report? Okay, seeing none. So we're going to vote on the receiving the report, and the bylaw will come forward at the bylaw stage. Okay, that carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. Shore Road closure. It's moved by Councillor Varney, second by Councillor Johnston. Be it resolved that report number DEV 2024-85, Shore Road closure 05-2024 for Decat and Campbell and Cashy Lake be received for information, and that council hereby declare the following lands as surplus, part of the original Shore Road allowance, OSRA, in front, Lot 12, Concession 8, Lot 4, Plan M93, and Parcel 6961 in the former Township of Morrison, now in the Town of Gravenhurst, District Municipality of Muskoka, municipally known as 1010 Oak Road, Gravenhurst. Councillor, are there any questions or comments on that? Oh. Sorry, Councillor Cairns, I thought you were getting ready. Oh, to press your button. Okay. Please vote on that, please. That carries, thank you. Okay, so it's moved by Counselor Karen, second by Counselor Hunter. Be it resolved that report number DV 2024-86, Shore Road Closure 06-2024, Marner, Severn River be received for information, and that council hereby declare the following lands as surplus. Part of the original Shore Road Allowance, OSRA, in front of Lot K, Concession 20, and Lot 12, Plan M392, in the former township of Wood, now in the town of Gravenhurst, District Municipality of Muskoka, municipally known as 1395 West Lions Head Road. Are there any questions or comments on that Shore Road closure? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Please vote. Okay, that carries, thank you. All right, so it is moved by Counselor Johnston, second by Counselor Strength. Be it resolved that report number DV 2024-87, RE Provincial Updates, Provincial Planning Standard 2024, and OLT e-filing and proposed changes to the tribunal's rules of practice and procedure be received for information. Mr. Ager, did you want to touch on this?
Yes, please. Thank you, Your Worship. And I'll be brief in my summary. The report provided to Council highlights two changes. One, the new Provincial Planning Statement 2024, which will come into force on October 20th of this year, so a few short weeks away. And then in addition to that, there's currently ongoing consultation with the Ontario Land Tribunal for their new e-filing system, and they've put out changes to their rules of practice and procedure. And really the synopsis of those changes is just updating the existing language to now be reflective of that e-filing system. So nothing's really changed from the OLT perspective. It's just changing the language within the document to be looking at the e-filing system. Speaking of which, it will now have planning authorities, so the municipality, applicants, appellants, all filing their claims digitally online through that in an effort to improve accuracy and timeframes. The municipality is already engaged with the OLT. We've been set up on the system. They even require us to send us our notices to ensure that they're satisfied with the language that we're using in our notices, and that it has clear instructions on how the e-filing system works, to which they've accepted and approved. So from that standpoint, the municipality is set up. In addition to that, the bigger changes with the provincial planning statement, the report does highlight sort of four key areas as it relates to Gravenhurst, and attachment A to the report had a more in-depth analysis of that, that I'm sure you're able to read. In 2021, since 2021, 10 different bills have kind of come through as it relates to building more homes faster in Ontario, and changes to planning rules, whether it's who has appeal rights or how many units are permitted as of right within existing dwellings. The provincial planning statement builds on that. In addition to that, areas of focus that are worth noting, I would draw your attention as it relates to sustainability and climate resilience. So the new provincial planning statement kind of lessens their policies as it relates to climate change. They no longer say climate change throughout that document. So they've taken out those policies, which could have potential impacts. However, it's worth noting that the town of Gravenhurst still has official plan policies, so it's the guiding document. We can be more stringent than the provincial planning statement. We have the ability to do that. So from Gravenhurst's perspective, as noted in the report, we'll be kicking off our official plan review in 2026, where we'll be updating language to be consistent with the planning statement, but also still be able to be cognizant about climate change here in our town. In addition to that, housing, the big change there is settlement boundary expansions, and what that means is originally municipal comprehensive review, which was something that was led by the municipality, had to occur in order to expand our boundaries. Now the PPS waives that, and basically now you have criteria outlined in the provincial planning statement, but basically a private landowner could file what would be considered an official plan amendment to do that. That does have implications both from a climate perspective and a servicing perspective, but namely, instead of having more dense development focused in our urban settlement areas, now the opportunity is open for private citizens to try to expand those boundaries should they meet those criteria. So that's worth mentioning. The other policy changes really focus on Ontario's largest and fastest growing municipalities, which Gravenhurst isn't lumped into that category. So that's really where you'll see the bulk of the changes. But there are applicable things and transferable policies as it relates to things like transportation, which the report talks about, and also land use policies as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have, and thank you.
Okay. Council, are there any questions? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, just a comment and a question for Mr. Agar. I found the language in the report quite interesting, and I realized that Director Halfer's not here. One word rather struck me, and that was and none too subtle nuance. The province is relaxing their safeguards on climate change. They're relaxing them. And which for anyone listening, and my colleagues around this table, what that means is they're moving away, as they have been doing for years. And the implications of that is, first of all, possible consequences for our efforts on climate change. Although when professional staff here in Gravenhurst and in Muskoka are doing much every day on that. But the other implication is that, once again, the province downloads responsibilities to us. We have to find the money, we have to find the staff, we have to find the resources to do this. I don't want to be subtle on this. This is the language that the restrictions are being relaxed is rather insulting, I think, because what they're doing is removing safeguards. And so my question, Mr. Agar, is the climate change and sustainability implications are mostly on large, sprawling development. Am I correct?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Johnston. That's one of the potential changes that we noted in the report, is that without the need for a comprehensive review to happen, and settlement boundary expansion can now happen more readily, subject to certain criteria being met. That's correct. Sprawl is a concern. In addition to that, too, there's also changes to the infrastructure policies that tied into the climate change component as well. So sprawl is one, and that kind of lumps into the need for more housing might be the angle, but you're right, sprawl is a concern. And then the other impact would be also how infrastructure planning is dealt with as well.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Council, are there any other questions? Okay, so I'll call the question to receive the report and just vote, please. And that carries, thank you. Okay, now we're moving into bylaws. It's moved by Councillor Strength, second by Councillor Varney. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read, passed, and engrossed into the bylaw book. Bylaw number 2024-95, zoning for Seoul baseline. Bylaw number 2024-96, zoning 2836924 Ontario Inc., Bridens Bay. Bylaw number 2024-97, zoning Siglin and Rowan, Loon Lake. Bylaw number 2024-98, zoning 283-36924 Ontario Inc., Bridens Bay. And bylaw number 2024-99, zoning Palter Lake, Muskoka. Councillor Strength.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to pull number 3.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So, Councillor Strength, can you give me some insight as to why?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In light of the new information that we've received. I think we should support the deferral and recirculate as suggested.
Okay, so be it resolved that the bylaw zoning, Siglin and Rowan, Loon Lake be deferred. And staff understand the direction as to why? Okay, that's enough for you? Perfect. And I need a seconder for that? Counselor Johnston? Okay. And please vote on the deferral. And the deferral carries, thank you. So now there is a new motion for the bylaws. Just missing the one, it's up on the screen. So we'll ask I'll call the question. All in favor? And those carry, thank you. Get caught up on my paperwork here. Okay, it is moved by Counselor Karen, second by Counselor Hunter. Be it resolved that the minutes of the council meeting dated August 27th, 2024 be approved as circulated. All in favor of those? Please vote. And that carries, thank you. Confirming bylaw. It is moved by Counselor Johnston, second by Counselor Strength. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024-99 to confirm the council meeting held on September 24th, 2024 be passed. All in favor of that, please vote. Just prior to, that carries, thank you. Prior to adjourning, I just want to remind the public that we do have the fall art event. Please give me the proper language. The Autumn Hearts, the Arts Festival. So, hope to see you all out there, and supposed to be some great weather. Let it rain itself out over the next couple days, and we'll see you out there. So enjoy it. And with that, I will call for adjournment. Counselor Johnston and Counselor Hunter. All in favor?